Memorization, Why and Why Not, August 10th, 2010. Taken from The Way, the Truth, and the Life.net by Donald Johnson. I'm going to talk to you about memorization as a cultural trait and the good part and the bad part of it. The background of memorization is through the Jewish culture, where they were required to memorize the books of Moses. In the Fertile Crescent, before the time of Abraham, already there was affluence. There were cities. There were power people, a class of rulers, and they had enough wealth to afford servants. And wherever this happens, the wealthy get wet nurses and babysitters for their children. And their children who inherit the power are deprived of those mammalian nursing bonds and paternal relationships that give protection and provision. And they often end up sociopathic or psychopathic and ultimately lead to much evil in the culture. But that's in the background. Abraham rebelled against the practice of child sacrifice. This, just like today, they're murdering in the order of 60 million babies a year, unwanted pregnancies. But in those days, they would throw them in a fire to some god, or throw them off a cliff, or throw them in a river, or leave them for the animals to get in the woods. But Abraham set a precedent of not sacrificing children, and that was the foundation for being sanctified. Sanctified means separated from the rest of humankind, a special culture respecting life. And that went on after the freedom from Egypt. The theme was reinforced by Moses with the Ten Commandments, and the memorization was installed to protect that culture, to memorize, that the young men would not have the freedom to think on their own. When you're forced to memorize, you can either comply or rebel. And in the Jewish culture, rebellion meant rejection by the family. Now, much of Christianity and Judaism were picked up by Muhammad, and he took the license to rape, pillage, and plunder as a service to Allah. And still today, sending children off as suicide bombers is in the Quran is justified. It's holy war, and they have a blessing for their sacrifice in eternity. At any rate, this memorization is common to many cults. It deprives the memorizer of the individual freedom to grow in individual sovereignty. They can comply and rebel. The same as the supposed Enlightenment in Europe was, much of it was led, like the communist ideology, by rebellious Jews who were rebelling against their constraints of memorization. But they really weren't free. And you see how corrupted communism was in its implementation, how much they murdered their own people. So memorization was lost. They rebelled against that culture. But we can, through mammalian caring for our children, we can raise children that are able to care for others like self and be thankful to their source of creation, their source of existence. They don't need to memorize. They can learn at a later age what other people have said and thought, but they can be free to think and see for themselves. Like Paul says, in Him we live and move and have our being. That's God. There's nothing outside of God. God is reality. Nuclear reality, chemical reality, biological reality, sociological reality, psychological reality. It's physical reality. In Him we live and move and have our being. And the memorization will only deny the one forced to memorize the freedom to grow as an individual. They can rebel or comply. In Islam, they can't rebel. It's the death penalty by Sharia law. So this is the background of memorization and the harm it has done and the harm it's doing today. What we really need to do is respect the rights of every conceived child, that it be conceived in health and cared for by mammalian nursing bonds and paternal relationships that give protection and provision. Mother that is capable of giving that mammalian nursing bond. More on that later. Thank you.